Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you. You know, a lot of people are asking, do we still even need church? I mean, all of the content, the teaching, it's available everywhere. And now that we actually can't gather, people are asking, do we need to gather? And there was a letter to the editor years ago, and a man had written in, he said, you know, in my life, I've probably gone to church, 3,000 times, heard 3,000 sermons, and I can't, for the life of me, remember the content of a single one of them. I don't think it's helping. I don't think I need to do it anymore. I think the age of church is over. And the next week, a pastor had written in, he said, you know, for the last 30 years, my wife has made meals for me every day, and we've sat down and she fed our family, and I can't remember the content of any of those meals, but I'm pretty sure if she hadn't done it, I'd be dead. There's something really beautiful about people gathering in community to be reminded of the truth they already know. And I think that's what really our celebration services are about. And true, we learn new techniques and we do learn things. There's no doubt about that. But our soul already knows it, I think. That what we're really doing is we're giving ourselves a focused time to be spiritually nourished, to be reminded of who we are, why we're here, so that we can show up as being that light of God. Jesus said, don't you know you are the light of the world? But we forget. We forget when our personal circumstances become difficult. We forget when the world circumstances become difficult. And so we gather together to remember. So I just want to thank you so much for tuning in today, and thank you for all the beautiful ways you're continuing to support this ministry. That we think that what we're bringing you is important, valuable, necessary, maybe now more than ever. So this is the final Sunday in our Revelation of Spirit series. In March, we did the Revolution of Spirit, which was about how it's actually an evolutionary process, that life continues to change and evolve. In April, we talked about the revelation of Spirit, that we are here to reveal the gift of God that we are into experience. Next month, we're going into the realization of Spirit. So we know it changes, we know we're evolving, revolution. What we truly are is the light of God in human form, revelation. And next month, realization, how? How do we take these principles, these timeless truths taught by Jesus and by Buddha and by all of the great wisdom traditions, how do we then put it into our life? How do we live the truth that we know? So next month we're going to be talking about relationships. We're going to be talking about vocation. We're going to be talking about all of the ways that we can choose and intend and then take action to begin to reveal that truth into our lives. But back to this week, the revelation of truth, final week, and we're calling it the calling of your soul. Calling is an interesting word. We talk about it a lot with ministers. Ministers have a call upon their lives, and they answer that call and step into ministry. We have an incredible team of ministers here in our church. There are 6 of us here who are licensed, ordained Unity ministers, and we do this work here in our community. Then we also have several who are on the path of becoming Unity ministers. There's something to that. But I want to tell you that it's not just ministers who have a calling. We all have a calling upon our life. There's a story that our friend Mary Morrissey teaches from a lot, and it's from the great Sufi poet Rumi, who I shared some of his poetry last week. This is another teaching story of Rumi. He said it's like this: it's as if we came here from a far-off kingdom with but one task, and if we accomplish this task, nothing else that we do or do not do will have mattered. And if we do not accomplish this task, nothing else that we do or do not do will have mattered. This task is the discovery and the delivery of the authentic self. And I think that is the calling upon our lives, to discover who and what we are in spirit and then deliver it, give our gift into the world. Howard Thurman says it this way: there is something in every one of you that waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in yourself. It is the only true guide you will ever have. And if you cannot hear it, you will all of your life spend your days on the end of strings that someone else pulls. See, there is something intrinsic to who and what you are that knows who and what you are. And if we can listen for that sound of the genuine, for that authentic self, if we can find that way to plug into really the truth of our being, then we have answered the call. So I named the talk, The Call of Your Soul. Soul is an interesting word. I'm not going to get into any theology because every tradition has a different definition. For me, what I think of the soul, it's the deepest knower in me. My soul is individual. It's not part of the infinite spirit. I believe I have a spirit that's part of the one, the all, the oneness that is God. My soul is mine. But I do believe that it was before this body, and I think it will continue on after this body. Many people believe that there is an infinite journey of the soul through many life experiences. But what I know is that my soul knows stuff. And if I get close, I think of it like sort of like being like a resonance field. When I am near something that feels like my soul recognizes it, then something begins to kind of vibrate and I feel something within me. In our meditation this morning, I asked us to call to mind a moment of great connection, of great well-being. Those are soul moments when the soul is saying something to us. And so what we're called to is to awaken to the presence of our own soul, to the meaning of our own lives. We're called to recognize that we are part of God's own body, and that when we plug in to that, when we wake up to that, there's another term, enlightenment, which is what comes from the Eastern tradition, that we are different. Life is different. But there is a teaching from Buddhism, which I think is really important here too. It says that before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. And what that's pointing us to is the idea that an awakening, this answering the call to consciousness, is not an external thing, it's an internal thing. And of course, our experience of the external life will change. Our experience of what we do in the world, once we know who we are, is different. But what I also want to remind you, particularly in this time of social distancing and pandemic and economic downturn, in all of this, that everything is a call to consciousness. Everything is here to wake us up. There's a very brief poem by Rumi that I want to share with you. The breezes at dawn have secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the door sill where the two worlds meet. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. The material world will lull us into believing that this is the real reality. That it really is about making the money and getting the stuff and meeting the girl or the guy, that all of those sort of external circumstantial things of our life, that really is what it's about, that it's just a material universe, and if we can get all the right stuff in all the right places at the right time, then we're satisfied. But those of us who are on a spiritual path know that that's not true. That there is a deeper reality that we must awaken to. And I think that We sometimes awaken in great joy, in moments of great transcendence and discovery, a great aha. What is this? Centauri, I think was the phrase from Zen Buddhism. It's just there it is. It's a moment of awareness. It's a revelation into our being. And sometimes we awaken through great struggle and through great pain. Someday I'm going to do a talk series on the hero's journey. Joseph Campbell and many other people have done deep teaching on these stories that every culture creates and it's to highlight this experience of awakening and becoming who we truly are. And in all of those stories of the hero's journey, there is indeed a journey. And we've all gone through journeys, right? And we're in the middle of an interesting chapter in our journey right now. But it's all a call to our awakening. So, soul, what is soul? That deeply resonant, knowing part of us it's who we truly are. And as we are awakening, as we are growing, learning, healing, becoming more and more of who and what we are, I believe that the soul speaks to us. I believe that your soul is calling to you and giving you information, dropping breadcrumbs upon the path of your life. It is showing you, giving you information about how you should move forward to have a deeper, richer, more meaningful experience of life, to have the abundant life that Jesus talked about. The soul is giving us information. And I'm not going to say that this is definitive, but in my experience, the soul gives us information in two major ways. It speaks to us when we are in a moment of great alignment and great rightness, Just that time when it's just right, like this moment. And if you weren't with us for the meditation, I encourage you to go back and listen to it, that I asked us to call to mind a moment of great connection. What came forward for me was holding my daughter. There was one moment when she was about 6 months old, and I had this memory of how right that felt, holding. You see, I'm doing this, I still remember her head was right here, and we were locked eyes. It was a moment of rightness. There was something that my soul recognized in that loving connection that is a part of who I am, that I want to pay attention to. When we have those moments, whatever it is, it might be a moment of great achievement in your work, in your career, in your art. It might be a moment of great love. It might be a moment of total peace, oneness out in nature. These are all things that might speak to your soul. And when you have those moments, the soul is going, pay attention. More of this. And it's not about the circumstances. It's about the energy of that connected moment. There's something there that is asking for your attention and your awareness, and more like this. It's never dependent upon an individual person. It's never dependent upon a particular place in the world, in nature. And that's where we kind of get in trouble sometimes, because we think it's about the form. That I can only have this experience when I'm at the Grand Canyon. Not true. Not true. I have a friend who moved to Texas from the Northwest many years ago, and she struggled. She loved the beautiful, cool, and wet green beauty of the Pacific Northwest. And in Texas, it was hot. And she could not find, for many, many years, her connection to nature because she thought it existed up there. And one day, she had an awakening that there was beauty in the natural world right here in Texas. And something opened in her, and the soul began to speak to her again in that way. So as we think about a calling, first of all, your calling is not your job or your career, though your calling may demonstrate itself in your jobs and in your volunteering and in your service and in your art and in your work and in your career. It may, and it may not. I love what Jan Van Zandt said about that one time. She was at my church in Dallas, and she said, everybody has a calling. Some of y'all got to have a job, too. That it's both and, I feel very fortunate that I have been working in my calling for 30 years, but I've had 3 different careers and about 20 different jobs in that period. As I have grown and evolved, my work has changed and shifted. but I'm in my calling, giving my gift. So as you step into giving yourself into the world in a way that is meaningful, rewarding, fulfilling, and freeing, the soul will give you clues as to what that might be by those moments of deep resonance and of rightness. And I find that the soul will also speak to us very loudly in moments of dissonance and trouble. That we have moments where it ain't right. That we don't feel connected and centered. We feel deeply troubled at a soul level. But this also is useful information. It's a little more problematic because there are two messages that may be coming here. And the first is how we would say it in the 12 steps is you spot it, you got it. That what we often are experiencing when we're troubled by something we see out here, the trouble is actually in here. And we have projected our internal dissonance onto a situation in the world. And we think that they're the problem, that's the problem, that situation, those people, that condition, that's the problem. And if I could just fix that, it would solve everything. Maybe not. Maybe what's being asked for instead is a realignment within you. That you have somehow strayed from your connection to who and what you are to that feeling of oneness with the Holy Spirit, that we know that we're a part of something greater than we are. We've strayed from that, and when we're troubled by something out here, that's our soul trying to get our attention and say, look within. So when Jesus told us not to judge, that's what he was pointing to. That we will be judged because we are judging ourselves. So that's always the first question to ask when we're troubled by something out there. Is there something amiss in here? When many of you know the Serenity Prayer. It's not created. It wasn't created in the 12 steps, but it's such a fit for people who are in recovery. It's like, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. My sponsor taught me really early on, put your hand in front of your face. Everything on your palm side, you can change. Everything on the other side, you cannot change. There's your wisdom, knowing the difference. That we are here to look within and do the work first. Now I'm going to say the 180-degree opposite of that truth. Sometimes, when we are troubled at a soul level, the soul is seeking to get our attention, and the problem is not something with us, that there is something in our collective consciousness that is not right, and it's asking for our awareness and our attention, and quite possibly our action. Years ago, I did some work with Greg Montana. He has a work called Heart Virtue, and it was really powerful. It was at the Big Sky Retreat in Montana, and for several days with sessions with him, we did this work of getting in touch with those breadcrumbs the soul is leaving. What's the most important? And we came up with 2 words at the end of many, many processes and questions and dialoguing with our partners in small groups. 2 words, and what Greg said was that this is who you've come to be, and it will never change. You were born with this, and you will live this your whole life, and you will die, and these are still the 2 most important things to you. He called them heart virtues. And for mine, they are compassion and authenticity. And I will tell you that feels as true today as when those words first appeared on my worksheet 12 years ago. It feels that's the shape of my soul. And Greg went on to teach us that sometimes when we're troubled by something we see in the world, it's not that we're unhealed in that area ourselves. It's because something we love, value, cherish so much, something that we are here to give and to receive in the world is being violated. And our soul rises up and says, no, that is not right. And this is how we evolve not just our own soul, but our culture and our species. is when brave and connected and soulful, called people recognize that something is not right in the way we are together, and something needs to change. You think about Dr. King, you think about Mahatma Gandhi, you think about these people who it was not their own dis-ease within themselves, and they didn't just go within and fix it. No, they said, no, I will step into the world and be a light and a change agent. And some of you are now being awakened in ways that are going to ask for your attention in a different way. Your calling is to show up a little differently. I do want to offer a caution, though. Ministers, we're called to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. I'm going to do part of the latter right now. We're living in a time of call-out culture and outrage addiction. That we love calling people out for doing stuff that ain't right in the world and just getting on our little holier-than-thou soapboxes and just feeling how good it is to be right. Yeah, I know some of you have already stopped watching the video right now, but I'm going to go on for those who are brave enough for me to talk about this. You're not as right as you think you are. See, it's tough to hear, isn't it? You're right, but not 100% of the time. See, nobody has all the information and nobody has all the perspectives except God. That we are limited in what we can see and experience. So what we're seeing may well be right, but we don't have all the truth. It doesn't mean that you should not be taking action. It doesn't mean that you should not be voting. It doesn't mean those things, but just know that you're not 100% right. And here's even the worst news, and then I promise it's going to get better after this. They're not all wrong. I know, some of you are just entrenching in your soapboxes right now. You're like, yes, they are all wrong. They are 100% wrong. They're evil. They're horrible, whoever they are. And if you think I'm talking about one political spectrum or another, I'm not, because it's happening on all sides and in the middle. People are loving to call out somebody else for doing something wrong and feeling so self-righteous and smug about the fact that I know what's right and they're wrong. Hear me. It's important to notice when you see wrongs perpetrated in the world. But when you feed your outrage addiction, it sickens your soul. Do you hear me? It sickens your soul. Your heart and your mind become diseased. How much news do you need to watch? I know some people are telling me they're watching 6, 8, 10 hours of politically biased coverage on both sides a day. It's not helpful. Stay informed, absolutely. I'm not one of those spiritual teachers who tells you to turn off the news completely. I don't think that's helpful. I think we need to be informed about what's happening in our world and what's happening in our political world. We need to be informed. But you don't need to do it for hours at a time. Particularly if you are getting your news from a source that has a particular slant, left or right, what you're going to be doing is getting information that is going to keep you keyed up in that outrage. That's how they pay the bills, by getting viewers who are getting that outrage addiction and keeping it fed. You don't need it, and it's not helpful. Okay, I think that's the end of my soapbox. And I could be wrong. That's the truth. And the truth is I am wrong. Every one of us is wrong. I saw a TED Talk about this once. The whole talk was about you're wrong. And she began by asking people, how does it feel how does it feel to be wrong? And people were like, yeah, it feels shaming, it feels embarrassing, I feel sad, I feel angry and she said, no, what you're describing is what it feels like when you find out you're wrong. You're wrong right now, you just don't know it. In many ways, your assumptions and your opinions and your ideas are incorrect, factually, objectively wrong, but you don't know it yet. And so if we can just have a little humility around our opinions it's going to serve us well. So the last point I want to make today is, as we are discussing how we are listening to our soul, how we're moving into our soul, is that your soul needs some nurturing. And 8 hours of political news is not nurturing. Caring for your soul becomes more important now than ever. Giving it tenderness and gentleness, giving it a time for those moments of resonance and feeling good and right. I just want to share with you, I am a person who loves connection. Like I mentioned, that moment with my daughter when she was 6 or 8 months old. I have always had animals. I have always had a little spot in the world where I can garden. And in my home right now, and in my life, and in my work, I don't have those things. I don't have an animal. I don't have a garden spot. And those are ways that I have experienced connection, nurturing, where I feel nurtured. My soul feels nurtured when it is nurturing something. So John Moore is like, I can't take any more of your nurturing. Go nurture something else. And because we're socially distanced right now, I've been baking. I've been baking bread. And I'm also counting my calories. Those are my discipline from last week. And earlier this week, I decided I was feeling pretty good about my recipes, my yeast bread recipes. I thought, I'm going to try a sourdough, creating my own sourdough culture. Her name is Gertrude. And I have been feeding her twice a day. And she is thriving and healthy, and she is just a spunky, fun little girl. I really like her. I did try to use her to make some bread, and she wasn't quite up to that yet, but I'm going to keep working with her. And it sounds silly, and it is. But if you've done yeast cultures, if you've done starters, you know that it's alive. It requires our care and our attention. And there's something about giving care, because here's the deal. Giving care and nurturing attention to this community is my main place now, where I get to give my loving, nurturing, caring attention to individuals and to groups and to this whole community. And it gets heavy sometimes. And if I can just have this little jar of my sourdough culture, it feels so easy to just give right here, just give that, and that nurtures my soul. As I mentioned, spending all that time in our outrage is corrosive to our well-being. It is sickening to our soul and our heart and our mind. In the epistle to the Philippians, Paul, it's actually, I did some research on this. Scholars believe it was 3 different letters that were combined into one. I don't know that that's important. But as with many of Paul's letters, he wrote this sometime between 50 years after the time of Christ and 70 years, 65 years. Somewhere in there, Jesus had been absent in the physical plane for a while, and Paul was really the one who was forming this religion, this community in many places around the ancient world to follow and practice the teachings of Jesus. And he was working with people, flawed, opinionated people who had different ideas about what it should be to be a follower, what you have to do to be a follower of Jesus. You have to become Jewish, you must become circumcised, you must keep kosher if you're going to be a follower of Jesus because Jesus is Jewish. Other people are like, no, that's not what it's about at all, and there were schisms and fights. Even in the local communities, there were fights and disagreements and diverse opinions about what was right. And so a lot of these letters that Paul writes to these baby Christian communities, he was seeking to heal that. And in the 4th chapter of Philippians, it's the first church established in Greece. They were having fights and trouble. And Paul, in the first few verses of the chapter, he says, please be kind to one another. And he calls out people by name. It's like, this is a good person. This is a good person. Work together. Love each other. And then in chapter 4, he says this. Chapter 4, verse 4. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. God is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, If anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. Every day, when you wake up, you're given a choice as to where you place your attention. What are the thoughts that you allow to work their way through your mind? And in this time, what I'm asking you to do is to focus on the positive, on the possible. That as you begin to listen for the resonant patterns in your soul's relationship with the cosmos, pay attention to what those things are. For me, it's about nurturing and connection, compassion, authenticity. And if I can spend time with thoughts and actions and conversations that resonate in that way, it moves me forward another step on the journey of my soul's becoming. You have a choice. How you use this time, how you use all your time, how you use every breath of your life. Listen to what your soul is asking from you. It will never lead you astray. If no one has told you today that they love you, I love you. Thank you for being a part of my spiritual family. I love you. God bless you. Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.